broadcaster.
Welcome back to the show. I seem to be having a little bit of a wardrobe issue. Yeah, but anyway, I think it's been an exciting morning, and these guys have got me thinking in so many directions. So yeah, I'm having an exciting one, and I hope you are too with the show. But we're going to be speaking about a really relative topic that I think affects all parents, and we want to give you some insight into how to dealing with the situations. So this morning, I'm going to be speaking to Victorine Mbong Shu. And let me tell you a little bit about her. She's an award-winning author, a CEO, a coach, wife, a mother of four, and a passionate parenting conversationalist, which I think is so important because she has a little bit of everything to give us guidance on. But this morning, we're going to be touching on the conversation of discipline and your children, and of course, still maintaining a good balance as far as our relationships are concerned, because it's very difficult for a parent point of view to be able to balance the two. And this is where Victorine comes in to be able to give us better direction. A very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
Good morning. I was waiting to see my image online before I can talk. And thank you for having me, Sis Nafisa.
It's always a pleasure having to chat to people who can, give us better direction in life and create a better quality of life. And talking about that, you're a mother of four. So we're going to put you on the hot spot here. How difficult has it been being a mom of four? I mean, you're such a phenomenal person. You have so many accolades to your name. But from a mom point of view, from a mother perspective, I know a lot of the times that professional version will always come into play.
Mm-hmm.
But how are you keeping that balance, and how are you striking it where you try, and this is what we're talking about. It's very difficult because you want to discipline your kids. You want them to be disciplined because, as we know, discipline brings out a lot of positive in people. It creates, should we say, a holistic person in many directions. And I think the word is very important. But at the same time, I think a lot of parents have that fear of disciplining their kids because they feel it might, should we say, destroy the relationship in some way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I mean, it's a very long question. I hope I remember. But what has, I think I haven't coped. I wouldn't tell you that I'm a good disciplinarian unless you have to talk to my children. But I think what has made parenting easy for me is that I have put the burden of being disciplined on my children rather than carry that burden. Before they became individuals, so before the age of 5, between 5 and 7, where they come to know that they are their own person, I had shared the rule or the roles of being a disciplinarian with my husband and with my helpers, where I traditionally made sure that I was not the main person who went out there to say to my children, you have to be disciplined. I made sure that I aligned my disciplinary techniques with those of my partner, with their father, and then with those of the people, the different individuals that are helping me in grooming these children. And that would always include my husband, that would include my domestic worker, that would include the teachers, the coaches, everybody that gets entrusted at a particular time to be with my children. Fast forward, when they are between the ages of 5 and 7, I start having genuine conversations with them that says to them that the disciplinary how do I put it, that they have the responsibility of watching their own selves, of making sure that they are disciplined enough to do this or that. And one of the things that I didn't fail to do was to tell my children to hold me accountable each time I on my own side go against the type of values or ethics that I am teaching them. So,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, if I say to them, you have to be kind to everybody at any time, the moment they find me unkind to someone, they have the right to remind me to say, Mom, you have always told us to be kind. Why are you being unkind? That worked very well for us because it kept me on check. And because I was on check, I am always able to teach my children what I want them to see in me by being the role model that as a parent you have to be. And being a busy person, yes, I'm quite busy. I'll agree with you. Being a
Mm-hmm.
busy person, it works out very well for you when you share those responsibilities with everyone, but particularly with your children. When you keep them, when you teach them the basis of accountability when they are still young. Most people wait to teach the children when they are older, but you have to do that when they are still very young.
I so agree with you that accountability factor needs to come into play when they're young. So
Mm,
it gets inculcated with them and they grow up with that norm, knowing that, that's the way life is. But I think the
mm,
idea that you brought to the fore that I absolutely love what you told me now earlier is the fact that you tell your children to check on you as well. So
mm,
they get to understand. And a lot of the times, as you're saying, as parents, we are role models to our children.
mm,
So having to make them understand that if they have to check on you, then it's a mutual relationship in the sense that they will understand that that is the norm of life, that is how
mm,
things need to be done in life, and discipline is
mm,
a part of life. And I think
mm,
they get to respect you even more because they
mm.
understand that this is something that's going to grow, that they need to grow up with and inculcate in themselves too.
Let me just give you an example that happened. I think about on Saturday, I had visited a friend of mine with my child. And when we got back home at dinner, my child was telling the siblings that these friends' children are extremely disrespectful to their domestic worker.
Mm,
And then we got into that conversation, and she was explaining how they talk to the domestic worker rudely and
mm,
everything like that. And we had a conversation, but after that conversation, when I sat back to think, I felt very humble at the fact that my children treat my domestic worker like they would treat me, like they would treat their
mm,
father. They know that they've got to respect this person in the tone, because he was explaining the tone that these children were talking to their domestic worker as being disrespectful. And I felt very humble. The reason I felt so humble is because this lockdown took away the domestic worker that we have. And for
mm,
about 1.5 years, we had nobody working at home. So we recently, 3 months ago or so, hired someone. And this person came in with a new attitude and would treat my children like the boss's children. And I
mm,
called her and I said to her, Patricia, you have to let these children treat you like their mother. And you have to
mm,
teach them how to do that by not cleaning up after them, not picking up after them. Teach them how to do it for themselves,
mm,
but also teach them that you are the older authority in this house. You are a domestic worker to my husband and I, not to them. To them, you are
mm,
just an auntie that stays in their house. So you are their auntie. They will accord you that respect. And she is finding it difficult to treat my children like that. But because my children see her like just a relative in the house, she is settling in well. And when my
mm,
son was saying this in her presence, I felt so humble, but also I really felt like my husband and I have been doing a good job on these children to the extent where they can now pick up the difference just in the tone that other children speak to their domestic worker. And
mm,
the job continues. But what I want to say to parents is that they should look out at small signs that actually
mm,
derail their children in terms of discipline, and make sure that they hold on to those small signs and fix them, because the small things are extremely important in how your child behaves themselves out of your house, but particularly out in the bigger world.
I so agree with you there. I love your concepts and your ideologies of the way you're inculcating it in your family. I think definitely a role model type of family to look at where, of course, the respect levels are also taught. And it's nice to see because that's what I do with my family. My son has grown up in front of the domestic worker and he's married now. But the type of
Mm,
respect level that is there is so different.
mm,
She is
mm,
she's literally, like you say, a part of our family. And
mm.
I think these are the types of things we need to inculcate in our kids, that there shouldn't be a differentiation when it comes to that, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and that respect levels and those disciplines and ethics should actually be followed through. And we as role models, because our kids watch us all the time, and I think
Yeah,
they mimic, let's be honest, everything that we do. So
yeah.
it's what we do is who they become, and
Es-
that is the way it is.
yes, especially in interactive behavior. For me, when I come across, in the instance of my child, when I come across any child that is interactively ill-disciplined, I blame the parent. In interactive behavior, I mean about the tone that they talk to people, just the look that they give you. When I didn't have adolescents or teenagers in my house, I used to look at other teenagers rolling their eyes at their parents, and it used to really, really scare me, because I was like, wow, is this what my children are going to be? Because I thought that every adolescent was like that, you know.
Mm-mm.
And when my children got into adolescence, which they are still getting into, I have not really found a difficulty. I have not seen adolescence as difficult as what other parents have made it look like. And I come to understand that my judgment of many of these parents, when I look at their children, seems to be more than half correct, in the sense that yes, the parents really do not have control of who their child is and who their child would become, but unfortunately they have control of the environment that created this child,
Mm.
and that
I,
environment is where they have to
I,
focus
I,
and
I
and,
so
and
I
improve.
so agree with you there, Victorine. And the point I want to bring up next is very important. It's pertinent because okay, right now that we've been online and offline with school, but our kids have been actually interacting with the teachers. And
Mm,
what happens is, when you find there's a bit of friction, um, you find parents going to the school and scolding at the teachers, but not realizing sometimes that the discipline does not start at school. It
yeah,
starts at home. Discipline
yeah,
starts at home. Making your
mm,
kids understand the ethics and the way of life starts with us as parents at home, so that when they go to school, they respect their teachers, they listen to their
yes,
teachers, and they
yes,
understand the way their teachers are working with them is to be able to, should we say, ad hoc their life, create value
mm,
for their lives.
mm,
And I think
mm,
that's what we as parents and as role models need to start inculcating in our kids. Because if you walk into a school environment, it's also about, just a simple thing like a smile and a greeting. I mean, I walked into a school a while ago. I mean, my son's now married, as I said, but it was so nice and pleasant to walk into a school where you see kids that you don't even know, are saying good morning, ma'am,
mm,
greeting
mm,
you with that
mm,
type of respect and that discipline, and you see it
mm,
there. And I think
mm.
that's what matters. Is But you must remember, we as parents need to understand that it's going to have to start from home.
That is so true. And I love giving personal examples when I talk. The school that my children go to is a well known school. And I, for instance, had stepped into school a few times, and I even have it in writing where I had written to the school and said to the school, "You've got the right to discipline my children, so long as you know that you're doing it correctly." I am the
Mm.
parent who would not run to school. I would not respond to school if the school calls me for a matter that needed discipline, because the school has the right to discipline my children. For instance, I'll give you a typical example where my son, when he was 8, he peed on another boy in the bathroom, and the
Ooh.
school called me into school. So when I got to school, that was when I actually had to put this in writing. When I got to school, I asked the school, what control does a parent have on their child who pees on another child, apart from the fact that the school should have disciplined my child and then send the note home, so I then take it from there. You don't call me to school, because once you call me to school, you're actually giving a message to my child that the school does not have power to discipline him. So while in the school environment, he is going to carry on with such acts. Of course, I didn't say this in the presence of my child, but when we got home on that day, I said to my son, I have been to your school and I have given your school authority to give you the same punitive measures or even more than I would have given you should such a thing happen. And yes, he was well within his right to have done that to his friend, because it turned out it was a game that they were playing. The boy had peed on him first, and then he had peed on the boy. But because the boy's mother was a school staff, the mother made it an issue. But again, even so, even if my child was the first person to pee on that child, I would still have done the same thing and say to the school, please, I send my child to you as a custody of that child, and I give you every responsibility. Hence, I said to you from the beginning, I empowered the coaches, I empowered my helper, I empowered my relatives and every adult caregiver to be there for my child. Because once you are a custody of that child, you have to also make the child understand that you are a custody of the disciplinary measures or actions that they would go through should they become disrespectful. Then that is the only way that we would actually spread respect across the board for our children. But once we start streamlining certain shareholder or stakeholders and say only this person can discipline my child, you're actually telling that child that you can only respect the person who can discipline you, and you can always disrespect the person who cannot discipline you.
Now, I get what you're saying, and I agree with that. I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, what we need to understand as parents is, and the ideology, like you said, is, that the school is allowed to discipline the kids. But in this day and age and the environment, unfortunately, I think parents need to actually get to understand that aspect of it. And I'll tell you why, because a lot of the times when you speak to teachers, they're afraid to discipline the kids because of the repercussion of what is going to happen when the child goes to the parent and says, this is what my teacher has done to me. So I think the mindset needs to change, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on that aspect.
The mindset has to change for the pure fact that children have to understand. So it's not even only changing for us as the disempowered adults, but it's changing for the kids who need to understand that everywhere they go, they've got to put the same values. Whether they are talking to their teachers, their parents, or their aunties, they've got to show the same kind of respect because this person has the same powers to discipline them. And for me, that was the reason why I had to put it in writing, because the teacher had also said to me, or the staff member had also said to me, that they do not have the right to discipline people's children. And I said to them, I did sign a contract with you that said you are the custodian of my child when my child is in your premises. So I give you the right, and I had to put it again in writing to say, I give you the right to implement discipline on my children, because that is what I need. I need an all-rounded child because when I grew up, Sis Nafisa, please correct me if I'm wrong, when we grew up, our teachers were actually more of a disciplinarian than our parents. We respected our teachers so much that when we walked on the street and we see them coming, we would bow to greet them, or sometimes we even run away, So I don't understand why or how things have changed to the extent where today's children actually treat their teachers like animals, if I could put it that way, especially in South Africa. And parents have to understand that the violence that we have in school, the ill disciplines that we have in schools, come from how they have differentiated discipline with their children. That is where it comes from.
I agree with you.
It comes from
I
parents.
agree with you. I stand in solidarity with you as far as that is concerned. What I'm trying to say is, this is the thing. We as parents at home need to understand that the kids need to be given that direction to say that your teacher is your custodian. Once you walk into that school, your teacher has authority over you to be able to teach you right from wrong, because that's what we need to learn as adults. Otherwise, what sort of holistic adults are we growing up and bringing into this environment in the world where they are never going to be able to accept their rights, know the difference between right and wrong, and accept their wrongs and move on with, of course, the word respect involved in it.
No, I mean, thank you so much for looking at it that way. And this program is really important. I just hope that our parents will take your effort seriously, because discipline is not a one-day thing. And another thing that I've picked up with today's parenting is that parents are thinking that there's a way of disciplining children at a particular stage. It has to become a habit. For me, in my house particularly, discipline is a routine. It's something that you have a roster for discipline.
Sure.
When a visitor comes in, you watch how your children behaved, and then you told them you tell them after the visitor is gone that this is not how you should have behaved. You don't wait for your visitor to give you feedback or wait for the society to cry out. It has to be an ongoing thing. And it is very important that we also you cannot achieve discipline if the communication in your family is one way. It's important that we achieve a communicative level with our children where they are able to come and talk to us. Because mind you, I do parenting, I do family conversations. And in one of my
Yes.
family sessions, or many of them, I've come to find out that one of the reasons why children would disrespect a friend or a relative is because secretly behind your back, that friend or relative has been abusing your children. Most often it's sexually abuse. They have been sexually abusing your children or exploiting your children, and then they exhibit that discipline. So you just look at your child disrespecting that person, and you don't understand that there is a story behind that disrespect. So you discipline that child without engaging them. So my plea to parents is, as young as your child is, give them a platform to communicate with you, to interact with you, because through this you would understand why they also exhibit certain behaviors. It's the same thing with their domestic workers, their coaches, their teachers. Children just, as much as ill-disciplined they can be, they don't just become disrespectful for no reasons. Always try to find out the reasons why they treat somebody the way they do. And then you would understand from their perspective, and you would also teach them from their perspective, not just your perspective, because we now also live in the world where our perspective doesn't work anymore. It has to be a double perspective, the child's perspective and the parent or another adult's perspective.
It's so interesting that you bring up that factor of communication. And I think I always bring that up and I say communication is key. And I think with our kids, what happens is inevitably, as you were saying, times have changed. It's not like in the days when we were young, where we could sit down on the table and have a conversation. Everybody's stuck in their phones, in the technology. It's having to make that time, like you said, as a parent and with your child, communicate, understand the type of challenges the child is facing, and get to the root of the problem, as you were saying. I mean, a child could obviously be disrespectful because maybe they don't know how to stand up for themselves, as you were saying, if they're in an abusive relationship or something with the other. So it's getting to understand and know what they're going through and being able to give them that support structure in order to be able to move forward. But also I wanted to bring something to the fore, is that this is not meant to make parents feel bad and make them think that they're not doing a grand job with their kids. It's just trying to help them out where we want them to understand how discipline can work and better the quality of the lives, not just for themselves, but for their kids as well. So they grow up as all-rounded individuals. And as I was saying, it's not just about bringing home A's and B's. It's about the type of holistic individual that you create. And as I was saying, you ask yourself the question when your kids finish school, and that's what I did when my son finished school, and when he got married and stuff, is what sort of a holistic individual did you bring out? Is he respectful? How does he interact with people? What's important? Those are the things that matter, and those are the things that bring out holistic individuals into an environment that can work amicably with others and can interact well with others.
That is so true. And remember, you're doing this. So raising children itself is a legacy. It's a legacy project, So you are doing this for your generations. You're not you today with your son being married and coming up with children. You would see that consistently the way you had impacted your child's life is going to start playing out in the way he is impacting his children's lives. So we are not just doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for the generation that would come. And I
Mm,
do agree with you that the reason for this discussion is not to put anybody ahead of the other one. It's just to make parents aware. When I train, I always say to people, there's nothing new that I'm going to tell you. There is nothing that you don't know. The only thing is that right now, I'm going to remind you of the things that you probably had how do they call it, had on the looked, you know. So it's
mm,
basically a reminder that we are giving to parents out there to say, look, the world has taken you so far. You've been so busy. Today, let's
mm.
remind you, re-look at this and that.
I would call it a form of guidance, just to say,
Mm,
parents, here's some grand advice for you, and and a guideline to go by to be able
mm,
to have
mm.
a better relationship with yourself and your child. And I think that's what it's about.
I agree.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a phenomenal conversation, and we've learned a lot just through these conversations. And it's so nice to see that you bring your personal aspects into it. So I think it becomes very relatable to all those parents out there
Mm,
to be able to
mm.
understand that what really needs to be done. So thank you so much, Victorine. I'm hoping to check to you real soon. And you do take care of yourself. Thank you so much.
Do says, sees Nafisa, I appreciate you.
Okay, thank you so much. Take care. That was Victorine, and definitely giving us some insightful information with regard to creating this good relationship between our kids and creating this balance between discipline and a good relationship. I think that was very insightful. We're going to go for a quick break. Stay with us. We're going to be discussing a very important topic with pertaining to GBV after the break.